right, welcome to another episode of the Endurance Matters podcast. I am your host, Justin Metzler, and in studio today, I have Gordo Byrn. He is an Ultraman World Champion, author. He brought me his book today, which I can't wait to read. I almost bought it on Amazon in preparation for the podcast, so he saved me there. I'm looking forward to reading that. He's a father, overall very interesting guy. Welcome to the show, Gordo.
Thanks, good to be here.
All right, well, I start off the show with an icebreaker, hard-hitting question. So my question for you today is, if you had to choose between always double bagging it, and let me explain what that means. Maybe you know what it is. The full flotation pants with a wetsuit on top.
Ooh.
Or no flotation devices for the rest of your life. What's the choice?
I'm absolutely going with the flotation. And you knew that anyhow.
I knew you would.
Yeah.
But the double bag, I mean, that's an aggressive move.
Yeah, you're probably going to get some back pain with that.
Yeah. The legs are going to be like flying in the air. You might be horizontal with the face down.
Yeah, you can actually get that whole backside right out of the water when you do that. It's like I do a little bit of swim run, and they have those pull buoys that are almost too big.
Yeah.
Those give you almost too much lift, and if you're doing a bunch of sighting, your back just gets absolutely jacked.
100%. All right, well, cool. Let's dive right into it. So why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about where you grew up and how you got into sports?
Okay. Actually, my kids were asking me about this last night. So I was the fastest guy in my school who didn't run track. So to give you a feel for kind of what the level I was at, I played football. In high school, I played 2 years of club rugby at university. I went to McGill University in Montreal. And that was pretty much it. No swimming. I was a camp counselor in the summers, so active, but no real sport, no endurance. I got a lot into weightlifting in grades 11 and 12 with a little bit of running on top. And got fairly strong for a high school kid. Didn't lift much in college, and then got into my career in finance in my early 20s. Started when I was 21. Then kind of in my mid-20s, decided that I got sick of being out of shape and started lifting weights again fairly seriously, got pretty strong, and was just doing hiking. So no competitive background, and got into mountaineering. And then in my late 20s, discovered triathlon, started training, and just kept getting faster and faster and faster. And so I signed up. Back then, you had to send a postcard in to sign up for an Ironman. This is like 1998. Signed up for Ironman Canada the following year in 99. And so at the end of 98, I turned 30. So around my 30th birthday, I go to my first Masters swim workout. And I didn't know how to swim. So anybody listening that thinks they're too old to learn how to swim, you can absolutely do it. And then just kept at it. And so from 98 to 2002, did a ton of training, and the end of 2002 is when I won Ultraman Hawaii. So obviously a really big ramp in terms of performance. And then by 2004, probably 2003, 2004, 2005, I was kind of podium at most of the international Ironman races I did. I was never all that fast in the 70.3 races, but in Ironman I was very competitive. Not at Hawaii, but at that level, just one down from Hawaii. If I went to Hawaii, I mean, the best I would have been looking for back then would have been like top 25 or something, meaning from 20th to 25th. I just, because of the swim.
Sure.
Without that wetsuit, I really, you're using a lot of energy, and I wasn't particularly efficient in the water. I was relying on strength and fitness.
Yeah, interesting. Talk to me a little bit about the world of finance. And I guess like my question is first, how passionate were you about that?
Yeah.
And how intense was that world, or I guess how intense did you take it?
So started out in London in my early 20s and just worked all the time. And if I wasn't working, I was hanging out with my Aussie friends in the pubs, and that was it. It was just work and party, early 20s, like that kind of lifestyle. And so it was kind of all consuming, didn't really exercise much. Now, towards the end of that period, I did start riding my bike to the office and stuff, and we had a shower at the office. But riding the bike to the office is different than what you and I would consider riding. It'd be like, 20 minutes each way. But it was something, it was a bit of movement. Got promoted, moved out to Asia, and I was in Hong Kong for 6 years. And so with the promotion, I was able to control my own schedule. And so when I got into triathlon, it was relatively straightforward for me when I wasn't traveling to get about 15 to 18 hours a week of triathlon training. And then obviously I did a lot of travel because of the nature of the job. It was a regional job. Some years I'd be on the road half my nights. So half my nights I wouldn't be sleeping in my own bed. So that would kind of mess you up a little bit, but I got pretty good at just making it work on the road. What I called hotel bricks. You just go into some hotel and you're going to do 20 minutes on every machine and you'll do some circuits on the weights, and whatever time you got, whether it's 60 minutes, 90 minutes, or 2 hours, you just be kind of mixing it up, just getting volume in. And then the swimming would suffer a bit, but overall it was pretty good.
And then I guess at that point, like you said, you ramped quickly into racing Ironman, racing professionally. Were you balancing the finance job, living in Hong Kong, and trying to race professionally all at the same time?
Actually, that's a great question. So, okay. So 98, 99, I was juggling. I was trying to kind of do it all. Work plus amateur training. Well, I was not fast enough. I was very average when I started. Now, in 2000, I took a 2-month kind of holiday, and I came here, and I lived up in Sugarloaf so I flew from Hong Kong to California. I raced Vineman, qualified for Kona at the half Ironman there. They used to have slots. Then I came here and did a 6-week block for Ironman Canada, living up in the hills, which was a lot of fun. I'd pack the car and I'd drive down to Scott Carpenter with the bike in the back and a cooler and, swim, bike, run all day, and then drive back up to Sugarloaf. And for those of you who don't know where it is, it'd be like, what is it, probably 1,500 feet above Boulder. So maybe you're around 7,000 feet. So you're kind of getting that. I mean, it's an ideal altitude for hanging out if you're doing the altitude training thing. And then you're coming down here to train at the long course pool. It was heaven. I loved it. And then I go up to Canada and I'm second amateur overall. And I was like, wow, this was just so great. And actually the guy that beat me is Jason. And he's still racing age group. And we raced together over the years. And now we're still racing. He's about the same age as me. So now we're doing the same thing, but just, 25 years later.
That's awesome.
So I'm like, maybe I'll take a break from work. So I go back to Hong Kong, convince my boss to give me a 1-year leave of absence. Go down to New Zealand to train alongside Scott Molina, John Newsom, and the group of athletes that John Hellemans had down there who were training for the Sydney Olympics. And these guys were so fast. I was getting lapped every 150 when we were swimming long course. I mean, it was like Brad Bevan, Craig Watson, Chris Gemmell, Bevan Doherty. Hamish wasn't there, but it was a really good squad. And John let me he's like, yeah, you can come. He figured I'd get sick of it and leave, but I didn't, and I got better. And that was great. So that environment, I just learned so much. And I think around that time, so now we kind of roll over into 2001, I start racing elite. And back then, all you had to do was tick a box. They didn't have things like pro cards and stuff. And, in the weaker fields, maybe I get a podium. In the stronger fields, I get totally crushed. And so then it's just working at it and kind of working your level up and trying to figure out how to do better. I was doing some coaching as well. And I really enjoyed it. So I never went back to finance. I just took my life in a totally different direction. I did some financial consulting. I helped a friend start a business, and I worked in that. And that was great because I was working as a consultant, so I could control my schedule. So half the time I'd be able to train. The other half of the time, it'd be like working, but it'd be flexible working. So it was a really good period in my life.
That's really cool. Did you feel like you could get the coaching sort of off the ground right away, so that was stable enough to be able to support as much time as you were spending in the training? Or was it sort of like cobbling it all together, like a little bit of consulting, a little bit of coaching, spend as much time training that was left?
As soon as I entered sport, people were asking me to coach them. So if this was Web 1.0, I mean, it was bulletin boards that we used to post to something called rec.sport.triathlon. And we would just share ideas, and people started reaching out, asking me to coach. I took a couple athletes on, and then I took a few more, and then you roll forward, and then, you're a top amateur. So people are like, well, this guy kind of figures out, he seems like he knows what he was doing. One of the first online magazines had me as a columnist, so that got my stuff out there. Focused on Ironman. Then I also started focusing on doctors, pilots, CEOs, business owners. So people that had come from a life that was similar to where I came from. And, normally the dream was to qualify for Kona. And I got a lot of experience helping people get that done. And then word spreads from the people that you've been successful with, and it just kind of built out from there. So I had that, which was kind of covering my basics. I had the financial consulting side, which had some upside because I was an investor in the startup, and it all just really fit together nicely overall.
Cool. I guess, like you said, Web 1.0, that was sort of the time frame. Were you always sort of writing quite a bit? Because now I subscribe and consume a lot of your content, whether it's on Twitter or on your Substack or whatever it is, and your writing is consistent and elaborate and detailed. And I think everywhere where you post stuff on social media now, there's just a lot to consume. Have you always been doing that?
Yeah, I've always written a lot from about the time I was 17 years old. So I've always been, and so what's that now? 40 years. I've always produced a lot of content. The difference now is the reach that you can get and the video angle. Video is something totally new. I used to just be, it was all just, it was blogs. If you had a little bit of color on your website, that was kind of it, and a few pictures in. But now you got that video component, and it's shorts.
Yeah.
My kids tell me, it's like, you got 1 minute, Dad. That's it. So you got 1 minute to make your point. And if you're used to writing articles and chapters and books, it seems really short, but that's just how it's gone.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And even me, I'm 32 years old. Like, I'm still stuck in the long form content era. Like, I had a blog spot when I first started racing professionally where I would recap every single race, recap my training. And even this is a long form podcast. So you need people who are down with long form stuff. And I think we're maybe missing the 20 and under generation, but maybe that's my next evolution. We try to chop this up into little bits or whatever to get the sound bites.
That's it. If you look at what goes viral, you talk to somebody for an hour, and what you want is maybe 3 or 4 40-second clips, and that'll get somebody interested and connect with somebody and bring them to you. I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. When I write for the web, 3 ideas, no more, in a web-based article, and that went back even before everything was on the web. When I was writing for Triathlete magazine, I'd just be like, okay, what are the 3 things I want to say? And that's it. And so you'd say why you're saying the 3 things, you'd break it down, then you'd wrap it up, and there's your page in the magazine. And I brought that across to, web writing. And because basically, what do you got? You probably got somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes, and 4 minutes would be a lot. Everybody's going to be reading on their phone, and you want to kind of connect with them, educate them, where they're having a little break in their day.
All right. Well, I want to transition a little bit because I guess I've always sort of like peripherally consumed your content, like I mentioned, but since we've been swimming together a little bit more at the same pool now this year, and a little bit more interaction on Strava and maybe a little bit on Twitter, I've been really sort of interested in your specific training, and I've got a lot of questions on training as a whole, but I want to start with your training. So last year you raced Challenge Roth, and I remember following the build up to Challenge Roth, and I was sort of interested in it from 2 perspectives. A, the angle that you're in your 50s and you have that's just a different type of training. And, you have many years of experience, but training as a 50-year-old is different than training a 20-year-old. So I'm curious to hear about that, but then also just the long, wide scope that you take building up to races, because I feel like your preparation for Roth was 12, 18 months in the making. So I guess as a starting point, can you talk to us about like how you think about approaching a goal and maybe what goes into planning that process?
Yeah. So I do things differently. And I do things differently than I coach people because I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get my result. I'm focused on the result. Don't care. If I look bad at a race or I get my butt kicked in a workout, I've never cared about that. I've always just wanted to get better, which means I need to be true to myself. So what does that mean? Well, that means I'm okay with taking 3 years to get ready for an Ironman. I'm totally fine with that. If that's what I think it's going to take me to have a race that I'm going to be proud of, I'll do it. And that's what I did for Roth. So it was 1 year getting the swim sorted, 1 year getting the bike sorted, and then the last year was kind of run focused, but even that wasn't enough. I think it's going to take me another 2 years to get to the point where I'm able to run a marathon the way I want to and the way I know I can. So if you're thinking about that, it's really a 5-year progression to a decent Ironman result. Now, my result in Roth was okay. For my age, I almost got under 9 hours. And for my age, it was the fastest anybody that was 56 has ever gone. So it was good, but I know I can go a lot faster. So it left me kind of motivated and hungry. So let's talk about things I do different. I do a lot of easy training. And by easy, I mean zone 1. So I do a ton of that. Why do I do that? I do it because I'm focused on economy and gross efficiency. So if you're talking about going long, you have to be very efficient. And what I mean by that is I want the internal cost of holding Ironman power and pace to be as low as possible. We measure that in terms of oxygen consumption, but you can also simply just look at what your heart rate is, heart rate to watts. So you want that ratio of your watts divided by your heart rate to get as high as possible. Those sorts of changes take years. You can see them in a few months, but to really move the needle, you're talking 5 years. I mean, if you want to, and they will keep moving. If you look at these long-term studies, they will keep moving for like 10 years. So you're always thinking about base training and always thinking about building that mechanical efficiency. And then the other side is economy. When I was obviously somebody that can win Ultraman is going to be very economical. In other words, when they're tired, they can still run and ride at a reasonable output. So it's got nothing to do what their 5-minute power is or what their 5K time is. It's what can you do when you're exhausted in Ultraman after 2 days of racing? What can you do when you're totally shelled? And the same thing in Ironman too. If you have the ability to run 420Ks when you're exhausted, you are going to be a very fast amateur marathoner off the bike. I mean, it's different in the elite race now because the guys are running so fast. But back when I was racing elite, all I had to do was hold 4-minute Ks in an elite race. And I know, not at first, but eventually I'm going to run almost everybody down. And I just realized that early on when I was, way down the field. My first Ironman was like an 11-hour effort, but I passed 500 people. I was like, nobody's running in this race. And you just see it, and then you adjust the training to do that. So that's one thing. Another thing is I take a lot of low-stress days. So I'm not constantly revving my nervous system. So at least across a year, at least half my days are days, and I'm not sitting on the couch, I'm exercising, but I'm not stressing myself from a nervous system point of view. I'm not trying to do something hard. I'm not getting my heart rate up, but I'm just exercising and moving my body. So I'm still working on that economy and efficiency piece, but I'm letting my nervous system recover. That is essential as I've gotten older, because it feels like I got 1 hour a week where I can go hard, and I want to break that up. So maybe it's like, it's like 2 20-minute sessions. That'd be 40 minutes there, and then maybe 2 10-minutes. So I got like 60 minutes where I can go hard. Now, and by that I mean red zone, zone 4, zone 5, using a 5-zone model. If I back that off and I say, hey, I'm not going to go hard, I'm only going to do 20 minutes of that stuff, then I might have 2 to 4 hours worth of tempo that I could break up. So you have to be much more strategic with how you're using the more peppy stuff. And when I'm talking about multiple hours of tempo, that's really only in the summer for about a 6-week block when I'm specifically preparing for a race. The rest of the year, and sometimes even for an entire year, I'm focused on just that base building and increasing my general capacity. Most people are not willing to do that. And there's so much pressure on the elites now to be fit from February to November. And I just wrapped up a 6-month, what I call an anabolic block. I'm not doing anything really all that long. I'm not doing anything really hard. I'm just doing general base training and kind of building up my capacity. And folks, I noticed this as a pro. We'd go down to New Zealand. We'd do 13 weeks and stay in the same spot, doing the same week. And we do the local races down there. And we'd come out of that and we'd be so fit for the rest of the year. It would really help the blocks that followed it. And so now, as an amateur, you can do that. There's no pressure on any of us. We're all just doing it for fun. And so we can train what I call properly and professionally, even though we're amateurs.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear, because you said your sort of A target is always the races. That's your sort of focal point and what you're going to judge things on. You don't really care about the sessions in between. But you get people who are racers who really thrive off the racing and sort of don't care as much about the training. They don't care. They're like, all right, I don't really care as much about the session day-to-day process. And then the people who really are like living for the process. And I'm someone who gets more out of the journey and the training and the week on week and the building, and the races for me are maybe second to that. Where do you fall? And maybe it's somewhere in between.
So to do an Ironman really well, it absolutely wrecks me. So when I get fit enough to really race the thing, that last 90 minutes is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I see pictures of myself like in that last 10K, and I'm like, wow, that dude's really kind of hurting. And so now that takes a lot of preparation, and you also need to, your body needs, and your mind needs to be willing to let you go there. Because for many of us, if we're constantly tapping that in training, this is what I found. I'm not able to go there in a race because I've already tapped that aspect. Now, I call that sympathetic drive, the sympathetic nervous system, but it's kind of everything. It's the whole body, the mind, it's everything. And you have to be emotionally invested. So I used to focus on, I'm Canadian by birth, so I used to focus on Ironman Canada. It was a course I knew very well. I raced it a lot. And I was emotionally invested in the course and trying to win that race. And you listen to people, some people listen to Jan talk about Kona, and he feels that way about Kona. You'll listen to other athletes talk about that. And I would focus on, all year long, I'm thinking about Penticton. When I'm climbing in the hills here, I'm thinking about Richter Pass. I'm running out by the reservoir, and I'm thinking about running beside Skaha Lake. And it was all of that, and it all comes together on the day. And then after that, I'm wiped. I'm like done. There's no way I'm doing anything for a month because I'm so tapped out. Now, what I've learned subsequently is, keep moving. Because if your body's used to doing a lot of exercise and you just take it down to zero, that's incredibly stressful. But so that part, so the preparation and just getting ready to have that kind of peak performance was, I just love that. And I still love it. So I'm really good at just sticking with it for a long time. Now, racers. So my daughter, Lexi, our oldest, she's a 200 fly swimmer. And swimmers and people that do these shorter events, you don't see their best in training. So you can see her training and you could say, wow, this young woman is a great swimmer. But you don't see that next level, that racer level. So somebody that kind of has like, it's like zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's race. And it only comes out in a race where she has a strong field and she's emotionally attached to that race. So that kind of racer, that's a real gift. So my kids have that because they started racing before they can remember at Summer League. And that's a really neat thing. So my friends who raced as kids, some of them it's like this other gear. But it's not even like a gear. It's just like this other state. And they can just take it up. For me, I took it up, but I took it up because I was preparing properly and doing a proper peaking process. Sure. So I'm putting it all together, and that's just normal physiology. But you wouldn't necessarily see something from me and be like, oh, wow, where'd that come from? Because I would have prepared and it would have all been in my training log. So It's a different thing.
Yeah, I'm definitely the same. I didn't grow up racing super competitively. I was doing triathlon as a kid, like 12, 13 years old, but very recreationally. So I never really flexed that muscle of like zone 10, you know what I mean? Yeah. So very much like my results throughout my career is you could look at my Strava and be like, yeah, that's exactly what he did in training for the 8 weeks leading into the race. Yeah. And he went to the race and did the exact same thing. That makes sense. Yeah. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. I am curious to now transition things a little bit in terms of the elite world, the professional world, and the demands maybe that are different from somebody who doesn't have necessarily a 12 or 18 month lead up to a race and doesn't necessarily have the ability to be as emotionally invested into one race because now the pressure is to perform on multiple levels. For example, you need to deliver results throughout the season for your sponsors. You need to qualify to race Kona, so you need a high emotional investment because that is so difficult now. What are the differences, I guess, in your perspective, and maybe how do professional athletes strike that balance between not being revved up sympathetically all season, but then also leaving space to perform at a high level?
So, okay, two things there. First, unless you're a top tier athlete, you should focus on winning races. Sponsors want you to win. So if you're second tier, then figure out where you're going to win and how you're going to win races, because that's going to do a lot for you. Meaning you're going to get prize money, you're going to get sponsor recognition, you're going to get athletes if you got a coaching business on the side. So that's one thing. With these long seasons, I would say you got to look at it like 2 seasons. That's what we used to do. So we would look at, I would race New Zealand, I would race Canada. So first weekend of March, last weekend of August, there's 2 seasons right there. I think a trap that people get into with these long seasons is thinking it's 1 season and not coming down after that early peak. So if you are going to peak early, then I say you got to come down, and then you're going to have to come back up. The other thing is 1 peak a year. In other words, you got to decide what's your thing. When is your body and your life most conducive to doing the training and the preparation that'll get you closest to your maximum potential? Pick a race. Tim DeBoom did this great. He was focused on Hawaii. And he did other races, but his goal was Hawaii. And he was an athlete. He's my age. He raced at the highest level and did great for many, many years using that strategy. I think a lot of athletes miss out on that. They're kind of like, I'll just wait till I fall apart. Or they'll crush it in Oceanside, get a stress fracture, and spend a few months injured. And that's going to be their off season. And they're letting injury do the off season as opposed to planning. Something that's so much more powerful is if you have a plan and you back off before you're wrecked, your body is going to respond so much better when you come back than when you're trying to rebuild from ground zero from this constant string of injuries that can really hold people back. So that'd be my thinking there. I think, we thought there were some people, it depends on how long a career you want, really, because you can you can race a lot for, say, 18 months, but then normally something kind of goes wrong for you and you got to have a longer rebuild period.
Yeah, that is exactly what happened to me. And it's interesting because I feel like from observation from also like self-experience, you can get away with it. Some athletes can get away with it for many years. Like I got away with it for many years, pretty much 9 years in a row. Very little off-season, 10 70.3s or Ironmans every single season, 0 injuries. I'd get sick every once in a while, but nothing major. And then bang, major injury, huge reset, and very difficult to find the runway after that. And I think one thing I've struggled with in my career, and I'm just curious to hear your perspective on, is how to periodize a season and peak when it matters for professionals. Like you said, you might need to pick 2 peaks, but one thing I've really struggled with is getting those peaks timed accurately. So I will train, I'll have build-up races, and I've won a lot of those.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to my A target, I'm not on the mark.
So, well, I think about it in terms of a race block. That's one way that you can kind of get around that. So you're sort of like, all right, I'm going to have this block of 6 weeks where I'm going to do 6 races. Scott Molina coached me, 100 pro victories. And he would think in terms of a block. He's not necessarily, he knows, all right, I might not, because he can't guarantee he's going to be on the day, but he knows he's going to be in really good shape for a period of time, 6 weeks. And so he's going to do four races in that 6-week period, and he's going to have a race block rather than putting all the eggs in that race, in that one kind of magical race. Now, if you're focusing on Ironman, that can be tougher to do because of the nature of the load and things like that. But for this, for everything up to 70.3, you can kind of do that. You can have this race block. And so then it's about getting ready for that block. I would challenge anybody that races just a ton all year. I would challenge them to get, unless they're at the very top, I was like, well, why don't we try and get you to the next level? Why don't we try and get you a level up by not doing a lot of this race-specific training year-round, but let's focus on let's try and move the needle forward in one area, and if we changed that, your competitive profile would change completely. And we're going to focus on that for 4 to 6 months. And we're not forgetting about everything else, but everything else is kind of like a base training type thing. And that's how I approach it now too. So, when I'm talking that, swim year, bike year, run year, but maybe like the last 6 months, I'm going to do short course this year. I'm going to do nationals in August. Now, I want the race in my mind to be over at T1. And I mean, I know that's a pretty bold statement, but I have confidence in my run and I have confidence in my bike, but I don't necessarily have the same level of confidence in my swim. So if I can lift that swim, that would be a change for me. And so I spent 6 months focusing on, all right, what's it going to take to become a better swimmer? And again, in triathlon, a better swimmer, it doesn't show up in my 200 time or my 400 time. It shows up on just being able to sit on some guy who's going to take me to T1 and then be able to ride and run to my potential, because it's all submax. And so it's about becoming more efficient at a pace. And in the amateur race, we're a lot luckier than you guys because the surges don't last very long and they're not very hard. And so it's just a different dynamic. And so it's just the ability to sit there, and sitting there does not require me to sit at 110 meters pace. It's way slower than that. And so it's a fun game to play. And so I think of it in terms of pieces and components.
Yeah, interesting. I forget what you commented on. We had a Strava exchange, and you said like the less stressful part of racing is like when you're 57 or whatever, you were like less pressure, less stressful, something along those lines.
Everything's easier when you're older.
Yeah.
Now you're having, because any masters athlete will tell you you're playing whack-a-mole all the time with all these little things that you're having to manage. And if you try and train properly, as opposed to just trying to be consistent, everything will fall apart. So that's why I do so much easy training. I'm really cautious and back off. It's all it is about is just keep training, particularly with the run. If you can just keep running, there's been changes. I used to be a really high mileage runner when I was an elite. Just don't tolerate that anymore. So I got to focus on frequency, a couple key runs, really thought out, like, what do I need out of it? I can't just throw volume at myself and expect it to work.
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious to sort of talk about the other side of the spectrum. Like, you have obviously high performing elite age groupers like yourself who are taking it really seriously, trying to win your age group, get the most out of yourself. Professional athletes maybe fall into that same category. What about athletes who only have 10 to 12 hours a week to train? What's their approach?
So, okay, don't negotiate with yourself. That's number one. So build a week that fits your life when you're at home. And what I mean by that is literally a week in terms of I'm going to do this on this day, this on that day. Not the exact workouts, but like the swim, the bike, the run. Put it in the calendar, and that's it. That's your week. You're going to get time from that. Everyone in your life is going to learn what you're doing and the day you're doing it. And that's going to be probably worth, 1 or 2 hours a week just by not changing stuff. So that's 50 to 100 hours a year of extra training you'll be able to do because you're not doing all this variation. That's a big dose for an amateur. The other thing is, think about what is your critical limiter for almost everybody's bike volume. And so you need to be thinking about, okay, how can I get additional bike volume? So great way for somebody without a lot of disruption is just a long weekend where you're going to do 2 long rides. So you're going to ride long on a Friday and you're going to ride long on a Sunday. Or if you got flex work, you're going to ride long on Wednesday mornings. So you're going to keep your whole week the same, but you're just going to put in a little extra volume. You do that a few times, there's another 50 hours. And so the game you're playing is being super consistent with the basics and then trying to figure out how can I get an extra 50 to 200 hours if you're an Ironman athlete in the key parts of my year to kind of move the needle forward. And the rest of the time, you're just going to train and be super consistent and stay below the breaking point. And what I mean by that, we talked about when I was working in Hong Kong. If I went 1 or 2 hours over kind of that limit, everything fell apart. So like all of a sudden I'm like tired at work. I'm not sleeping great. I'm not benefiting from it. So you have to stay under the limit much more as an amateur. When you're an elite, top amateur, if you have a flexible schedule, you go a little past the limit. Okay, you got to have a nap. You got to have a couple easy days. It's not a big deal. You just, especially if you overload with volume, it's pretty safe. Green zone stuff, you're going to bounce back pretty quick. It's just not that big a deal. But if you're a working athlete with a serious job and you go over the limit, you don't have the ability to de-stress your life. Your work stress is a real part of your life.
Yeah. And what about athletes who are confined by, let's say, 12 hours a week, feeling like they need to push sessions or push up the intensity to make up for the lack of volume? I coach some athletes who are 50, have really high profile jobs. They're always trying to just push things, I think, because maybe in the corporate world, that hard work ethic or whatever pays dividends, but the overall stress in addition to that, I find sometimes can be counterintuitive or counterproductive.
Yeah. So 2 things there. First up, those individuals do not realize the amount of stress they're under. When you start measuring their morning HRV, they'll say, I have genetically low HRV. It's just my genetics. And I'm like, dude, it's not your genetics. Yeah, right. It's your lifestyle.
Sure.
You're always revving your nervous system, and that's what's kind of pushing it down. So making that person aware that the adaptation piece, we need some days I would say at least half, probably more than half for an individual like that, where we're not revving them up exercising and we're focusing on strengthening the parasympathetic side with the easier training so they get better adaptation. That said, I have coached some hard chargers and I call them best average trainers. And what they want to do is they're like, look, I got so many hours, so many sessions, I'm just going to best average everything. That works great, depending on the athlete, up to about 70.3 distance. It falls apart completely in an Ironman. So you can't prepare for an Ironman that way, but if that's the way you happen to like to train, you can run a good marathon off it, you can do a good standard distance, and you could probably squeak out, if you've been at it for a few years, a decent 70.3. And so I would say go shorter. I would also say to really benefit, you're going to have to back off on some of the days, but if you want to do half your days where we're just going to train best average, I've seen it work. The athletes that it works for, though, they eat, so they're fully fueled, they're strong. So it's normally somebody that's like a naturally strong athlete. And by that, I mean they're probably a little more muscular, and I'm talking male and female. And the other thing is they've been at it for a very long time. So they've been consistent for a long time. So although their hours per year might be lower, the years have been stacked. And when I got a buddy who's in his 60s, I mean, who's very fast, wins his age group at most things. And, so he's stacking, I mean, it goes all the way back to high school. I mean, so he's stacking 45 years of consistent training. And yeah, I mean, that makes a real big difference. And he's solid.
I know who you're talking about. You don't have to move huge rocks when you're trying to race in the 65 to 69 category. And, you're already you have that many years of evidence underneath you. It's, powerful, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
I am curious to hear your perspective, I guess, across all of these levels, whether you're elite age grouper trying to get the most out of yourself off 10 to 12 hours. What's your perspective on misses and adjustments? Because this is something that I see quite a lot with the pros that I coach, the age groupers that I coach. Some of them are very interactive with me. They'll say, hey, can I flip this? Can I shorten that? And I can give good guidance. But I get a lot of folks who, hey, I had a work meeting, can't make it in the afternoon, kick it to Sunday. Now Sunday's a long run, my 2-hour ride. They're stacking, they're shifting, they're moving things around. If you get sick or you get hurt or you have a work meeting come up, what happens to that session? Does it get kicked? Does it get adjusted? What's the advice there?
Okay. Well, so the basic week gets you around a lot of that. So if you have your fixed week, that's it. So you get more stability in it. Now, there are some people where they don't have control of their schedule. So I'd be like, all right, well, let's try and figure out the days where we can start getting control of the schedule, because that's really stressful. So whatever you got, you don't want to have to be, so try and get some stability in there. The other thing is the signal is in the miss. So when somebody comes to me with all that, I don't really care what the story is. The information is in the fact that there was a miss. So 1 miss a week, no big deal. Just forget about it. 2 misses a week, well, we might be seeing the start of a pattern. 3 misses a week, we're clearly aiming too high for the life. So we're going to have to step it down, because a program, so in Training Peaks, if they hit the workout, you get green. First thing I do with somebody, I was like, look, all we're doing is we're building a green week. That's what we want. I don't care what's in it. I just want it all to be green. And that's where we're going to start. And when we've been green for 6 to 8 weeks, we'll know that we have something that works for you. And then, and only then, we can start thinking about what's in those days and in those sessions. Until you got the green week, it doesn't matter. Until you're able to do, don't worry about what you're doing. So that would be kind of how I would approach it with the person. Because it's information. It's like, all right, we're just aiming too far. Let's just step it down. You will get more. So the person listening, you will get more out of your training if we can just build something that you're hitting week in, week out. It's just going to compound. And it's a leap of faith at the beginning. But I mean, I used to tell people, you got to give me 500 days before you make your mind up. But way before that, they can see that it's working, because the compounding, I mean, by 18 months, you're in a whole different spot from when you started if you can just stay healthy, have fun, and just roll it.
Yeah. I mean, I find it sometimes difficult to get athletes to buy into patience because they have races on the schedule. They feel the pressure, especially from the professional side of things, to really push it, to feel like they're doing as much. And I think especially in 2026, where comparison is the thief of all joy because everyone's looking at what Christian Blumenfeld's VO2 is and what I'm doing on Strava and this and that and saying, oh, well, you know, this person trains 25 hours a week. Why does my plan not have 25 hours a week? How do you get folks who are demanding that as the expectation, but they can't in reality deliver upon it, so they're constantly falling short, and then they're stuck in that sort of gray zone where they're actually not getting the evidence to build from?
That's the opportunity for you and me. Not fixing them. You gotta be what you want the team to be. And that was always my focus when I was the head coach. I am gonna show everybody how to do it. I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna publish, and everything I do is gonna be on Strava. And so when I say I train easier than every person my speed in the sport over 40, they're gonna be able to pull it up. And I'm gonna be able to produce charts from Training Peaks and data to prove what I'm doing. And I've done this from the very beginning. I mean, it used to be just a one-page text thing that I would put up on my blog every week. This is what I did this week. And I would just do it every single week. Holds me accountable. And it's about that. It's just about being transparent. And people are like, okay, you know, Justin's doing it. This is how he's training. I can see the development he's getting. I can see that it's working, and you instill that power of belief in the team. Now, some people, many people, are not going to be able to overcome themselves. And part of that is the personality type that is attracted to endurance sport. But it's okay, because there's a lot of different ways to get fast. I mean, in this town, you can see many different approaches. There are people who are extremely good athletes, great athletes, world champions, who train completely differently from me. And that's okay. So what's that tell us? Well, it tells us maybe we should be a little more relaxed about protocol, and we should work with the athlete the way they want to work, because ultimately it's going to be about getting the work done. That said, you mentioned Christian. What everybody forgets about is the 3 years where he banged out 4,000 hours worth of training. So you've got a human who can roll at 1,300 hours a year while winning world championships and gold medals. So if you're baselining yourself off that human, make sure you're an equivalent human. If you're not, you're going to have to choose a different reference. That's why I follow 50-year-old guys that I see win their age group in Ironman. If you win your age group with a great time in an Ironman race, I'm looking for you on Strava. I'm going to try and follow you. I'm going to say, hey, what's this guy up to? You know, what's going on there? Maybe I can learn something from it. So you have to choose the right reference set for where you're gonna set stuff. And ultimately, you know, on this stuff, it's a blue collar sport. You need to be willing to do the work for the level that you want to achieve. Otherwise, you're just going to be frustrating yourself. But that work is going to change as you get older and as you develop. You'll be able to work smarter, and the body's going to change as well. So you'll need some slightly different approaches. But the fundamentals are going to still stay the same. It's going to be volume. It's going to be focusing on efficiency. It's going to be improving your race-specific economy. So the economy at race-specific velocities, those fundamentals are going to stay the same.
Yeah. I am curious to hear, because you coach yourself, correct?
Well, you know, I got a lot of friends that are really smart, and I'm always trying to pull stuff in. So Julie Dibbins coached me for a couple of years. She got me through Roth, and I was really pleased with how that worked. I have a tremendous respect for her. With the coach, I just want to put something out there. When I was younger, I always chose coaches like me. So Scott Molina and I are very similar in physiology and in psychology, although he's much more mellow than me and probably he'd be a lot more fun to hang out with, I think, than me.
I don't know if that's true.
Well, he's pretty fun. And I chose Julie and approached her because she thinks very differently from me. So as an older athlete now, I was like, you know what? I want a different view. I don't want somebody to tell me what I'm thinking all myself. I want somebody who's going to be thinking differently and have different workouts and push me to do the sessions maybe I wouldn't do on my own, but able to explain why that's going to benefit me. And so we had a really good partnership, and that worked really well. And then before that, I had John Hellemans, who's somebody I've known for a long time. He's my co-author on the book, because John, I was really struggling on the whole masters running thing, and he's about 10 years older than me. And so he helped me through that with like, yeah, I realize that you feel like you're falling apart all the time because you are. And here's some ideas. And then even before that, Niels van der Poel's coach, Johan Royler, Johan coached me when I was just getting into coming back. And that was really great because we did a coaching exchange.
Cool. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Julie. I was coached by her for 5 years, 2018 to 2024, and like all of my actual class results were under Julie. Yeah, so I really agree that she's like an exceptional coach, and similarly, she thought very differently, and I also appreciated how direct she was, especially with me. She would just tell me exactly what I needed to hear, no bullshit, straight to the point, and I always really respected that about her. And so I guess my question was, if you're, we all have mentors, but I guess now heading into this next phase, if you are coaching yourself, how do you prevent yourself from becoming obsessed with the day-to-day and creating that plan? Because I think that's what I struggled with. So I went from Julie to self-coaching because I wanted to explore that and see if it could work. I did it for about 18 months and I found out it couldn't work for me because I coached 25 people. I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy focusing on those people.
Yeah. And
then I was devoting 50% of my attention to my own plan, and they were suffering because of that. So I said, I need to outsource the coaching. And so I have a coach now so I can just do the plan and not think about it.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with that, or is it less pressure because it's more fun?
So a couple things on that. I totally get it. That's why CEOs used to hire me, because they're like, I don't want to put any bandwidth on. You know the subject better than me. So just tell me what it's going to take for me to get ready for this race. And I have confidence in you. And if I don't, then we'll just have a conversation then. So I get that. That's really smart to see that. So on the self-coaching side, it's pretty simple, actually. I think getting ready for races is actually pretty straightforward. You get very generally fit. And I know enough on the scientific side so I can assess that objectively. And then you need to set up a series of like rules. Like, okay, so I said earlier, half my days are easy. So I got to make sure that I stick with that. So I need these low stress days in there. And then really I'm just focusing on one thing at a time. So twice a week. So I'll have 2 days where I'm trying to move the needle on my one thing. And that's it. The rest is just endurance and strength, and it's kind of filler. I think we can make it more complicated than it needs to be, and we can invest more mental energy than we need to put into it. I mean, I think I see that particularly at the highest levels. I got a buddy who trains 1,200 to 1,300 hours a year, and they think a lot about down to the minutia of the sets. But if you're world class and you got the ability to do 1,200 hours, so basically 100 hours a month on average while racing and traveling around the world, you're getting it all right. Yeah. I mean, you can relax about it. But again, it's the personality type. It's that always trying to do their best. And that personality type's great. If you're in the water, you're constantly trying to get that little bit better technically, but you have to at times, you got to kind of unplug from that so you don't eat yourself up with obsession. Yeah.
That's where I sort of faltered with the self-coaching thing, was I wasn't able to unplug. Every session was a critique. Every session was really trying to focus on every minute detail. Whereas now with a coach, it's like, okay, do a 4-hour easy ride, put your Garmin in your back pocket. It's okay.
Yeah. So when you got a coach, if you got a coach like Julie, who used to be an elite, I mean, she knows what it's like. She knows, she can relate to how, like she would say to me, I was like, hey, I don't have power on my gravel bike. She's like, great.
Yeah.
Like just go out and ride. and just go do a ride. And that's totally okay. And I feel that sometimes, sometimes I just want to just go for a run. Like when I was a pro, I mean, we used to just go for a run, right? And then you just put 10K in the log and that'd be it. Now, because I want to carry on a conversation with people and I want to be able to quantify what I've done with people, I do measure everything in terms of heart rate and pace and all that. But it would be nice, sometimes I get the urge, well, maybe I'll just jack it in. But like you said, if you just put the Garmin in the back pocket, that achieves the same thing. The data's captured, but I don't need to be focused on it. And then I just download it when I come home.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, I always finish the podcast with a rapid fire, but I've got a rapid fire about coaching and training topics before the rapid fire.
Okay,
so
let's do it.
I want to hear your perspective on just a couple of things and just give me like a quick synopsis of whether you agree with it, disagree with it, like it, don't like it, and you can elaborate a little bit if you want.
Okay.
All right, number one, HRV, tracking.
It's a very good negative signal in the short term. So it's a good red flag. Long term, as you become more resilient, it will appear in the data, but the data is very noisy. So you have to be looking at your average. So I've been tracking it now for 4.5 years every morning, and there's been a clear shift upwards as I've become more resilient, more healthy, with a very deep level of fitness. But that doesn't show month to month. It's like year on year, and there's so much noise in it. So I wouldn't use it for if you can't prove you're ready. You could definitely prove you're not ready, and you can definitely see year on year if you're becoming more healthy and coping better with all aspects of stress.
Okay, cool. Number two is chest heart rate monitoring versus an armband or optical sensor.
Yeah, optical sensor is useless unless you're asleep because there's just too much movement. It's too bony. Arm thing in races, I come out of the water and I'm wet. And my body is really good at dumping heat. And until I'm hot again, it's going crazy. Mm-hmm. So that first bit on the bike, it's always crap data, but I don't care. I got watts. And so I know what's going, but that can be frustrating for a lot of people for that if you're cold for that first bit of the bike.
Okay, interesting. Lactate testing intra-training for athletes who train less than 15 hours a week.
Everybody needs to lactate test. I wouldn't coach somebody if they didn't lactate test. Doesn't mean you need to be going hard to get it. The most valuable lactate test is just figuring out what it takes. So how low can you get and what's the power and pace that it takes to get you off that floor? That is a test everybody that cares about performance should do. I also think it's a test that everybody should do just for general health, because if you're metabolically unhealthy, that's going to appear in a lactate test way before your doctor sees anything.
Cool. Interesting. All right. Sauna and heat exposure in conjunction with training and then not in conjunction with training.
Okay. Yeah. It's totally overhyped. It's again, geez, you're training 1,200 hours a year and you're going to wreck yourself by going in a sauna or turning the shower on in your bathroom and smashing yourself for an hour. You really need to think about that. Is that fatigue going to be worth it? And if you're training 12 hours a week, forget about it. Just train more. That heat stress is going to take so much volume out of your week, it's not worth it. At the high level, I would say be very cautious of taking training techniques from sports that have a history of microdosing EPO. There was a lot of talk when I was in elite with artificial altitude, moving everybody's numbers. Subsequently, we found out that those guys were microdosing EPO. So I'd be cautious with it. That said, I love heat training. And I love it. I love the sauna. I do it every day because it relaxes me and makes me feel good. It's on the adaptation side. I'm not trying to get my hematocrit to like 50 because of it or something like that. So I think that's good. If you're going to race hot, you got to train hot, and you got to train the ability to drink and move fluid out of your guts when you're really hot. Very trainable. I trained, I trained for Ultraman, which I won when I was in New Zealand, just by wearing some extra clothes and stuff. I mean, yes, you need to do it to perform, but don't expect, if you're not doing the work overall, you're not going to get magic from like putting a heat suit on and wrecking yourself.
Yep, couldn't agree more. What about cold exposure?
So I don't like cold races. I don't like being cold. If you are an athlete who tolerates cold really well or doesn't tolerate cold well, choose your races wisely. I had some races in New Zealand that were really cold, like it was actually snowing on the hills up above, and we kind of figured it out in terms of clothing choices. So you just have to be smart about what you're wearing. I do not enjoy cold water. I'll tend to avoid those races. I had whole body cramps in Oceanside last year, like literally everything, just because it was too cold. They have us waiting in the corral like a long time. Even you guys, I mean, the pros went in and they're just floating there for what seemed like forever. And I was like, they would have had to fish me out. Like I wouldn't have made it to the start.
I wish they could bring back some cold races. I'm always scouring because I love cold races.
Yeah.
I like extremes. Like I've done really well in super, super hot and then really well in super cold. And I can't find any cold ones. And so
Norseman,
maybe Norseman.
That'll do it for you.
They keep emailing me asking me to come. So maybe this year.
You should do it. You can train for it here.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk about that because it's always intrigued me, and maybe this is the point where I need something a little bit different.
You just do that Estes ride, by the way. There's your Norseman ride.
I do that twice a week anyways, just for my mental health.
Yeah, so just that out and back, and you're ready for the Norseman code. You know, you just get ready to a bit of cold water, and then a couple green mountain loops, and you'll be ready for the run.
All right. Well, I mean, the cold water is never an issue. I mean, I did Challenge Iceland 2 years in a row where it's like the glacier's melting into the fjord. It's like 51 degrees. And both GD and I won the race, and we were like, she hates the cold. I don't know how she did it because she's from South Africa. And I'm a Chicago guy swimming in Lake Michigan pretty much year round. So the cold for me is no big deal. So maybe Norseman. All right. Final one in the rapid fire before the rapid fire is high carb is going crazy. 10 years ago, low carb's going crazy. What is it the high carb cyclical? Is low carb going to come back around? Where do you fall on all that?
You got to do everything. You need your low carb days. You need your high carb days. If you're doing high carb all the time and you're an amateur, you're going to be gaining weight. It's just too much energy going into your body. Mm-hmm. But if you want to perform and you want to rip, you're going to need a fuel and you're going to have to tolerate, and this is the males. I mean, some of the females probably don't need as much because they're not putting out as much power on the bike. But I would argue they would need to do more than they think.
Sure.
A lot of them, most of them. And so it's both. And I think that's what a lot of amateurs miss. So they're kind of like, oh, Killian just trains on water. That's what I'm going to do. Well, maybe if you got Killian's physiology. What I do is I have days, most of my days, where I'm just eating real food. I'm not doing anything long enough to need to be pounding sports drink. But if I'm trying to stay on your feet at a master's session where I'm going to be swimming 5,000 to 6,500 meters and 40 minutes of that is going to be full tilt, you better believe that I am carbing up for that. Why? Because I'm going to perform better in that session, but I'm going to recover faster afterwards. And recovery is a challenge for a higher volume, higher performing athlete. And that's why I'm going to fuel there. And then long days in the summer, I absolutely need to train the ability to do 23 to 2,800 calories of carbs on a long ride. I need to be able to process that and figure it out and just get used to it and get my body used to that because that's an essential part of a fast Ironman for me. I need to eat more.
You're preaching to the choir here because I'm 80 kilograms and I'm a big guy pushing big power. And so I need to be I was doing 150 grams an hour 7 years ago because I was like, this is what I practiced in my training. If I do any less, I start bonking. So I need to do this.
Melina was doing that in the mid to late 1980s. That's where I got it from, him and Mark Allen. They were just eating tons.
Yep. And
so it's been around for a while. People have known. I think there are some elements of, on the lower side and the timing side, but really that's just the energy management side overall. And it's easy to get that wrong. And if you're an amateur and you underfuel and you miss your big day it's not like you got another 10 of those big days coming up in your summer. I mean, those days are really valuable. You got to get the most out of them.
Sure. All right. Well, that's all the rapid fire before the rapid fire that I've got. I've got a little section here. I want to talk a little bit more about family. I was reading an interview in preparation for the podcast, and I read that your last professional race sort of came around the time of the birth of Lexi, if that's correct.
Last pro race. Yeah. That sounds pretty good. I was still pretty. I hung on I stopped racing elite in my late 30s. As soon as I turned 40, I kind of took a year off because I didn't want to rock the boat by going straight into the amateur stuff. And I stayed pretty fast until 41 or 42. And then once Lexi's turned 2 and Axel was born, our second kid, then I kind of shut it down for a period of time. About 10 years I didn't race.
Okay. I'm curious about that because Jeannie and I are expecting our first baby at the end of July, early August. And so I'm sort of thinking through those things. I've been racing professionally for 13 years. I've still got goals, but I'm curious if like the baby's going to impact things and I'm going to create more pressure. So I guess like what made that time period busier, more hectic, and maybe drew you away from racing as much?
Well, I took a look around so I was 40 when Lexi was born, when our first kid was born. So I was kind of at a natural transition point out of elite racing. I took a look around at my peers. So the other guys my age, and I had some older people too. And I didn't like where my marriage was going to go and where my family was going to go if I didn't back off. So that was something for me. I thought it was likely that my marriage would suffer. And remember, now I'm just a fast age grouper. So I'm not doing it as a living. And I was like, it doesn't seem like a good trade for me. So that's why I kind of decided, all right, I'm going to take a break. I thought I was just taking a year off. But then we had another kid and I was kind of like, oh, it just doesn't fit. The other thing that I noticed, and I would say to people, pay attention to this. There will be times in your life, whether you have kids or not, when you're going to stop recovering. So at first, the house is getting more hectic. There's stuff going on. I thought, well, that's no big deal. I'll just move the volume down a bit. I was always a high volume guy. So take 20% of my volume out, still not recovering. Take another 20% of the volume out, still not recovering. So the issue was I just had too much going on in my life to train the way I used to train. And at that point, I was kind of like, all right, I guess I'll just take a break. Now, taking a break did not mean leaving health. So never leave health. I was still active. Every day I did cardio or some sort of strength training. So it wasn't like I shut it down, but I just changed focus totally.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm using this partially as a personal work through because I'm just unsure about what I want to do because I'm still passionate about racing and I don't feel like I need to necessarily detract 30 hours a week, but maybe I can, I can't be a 30-hour a week guy. I think like my sweet spot's more in like the 20 to 25 hour range. If I do much more than that, I start getting really tired. And so maybe that's doable in conjunction with a baby, but yeah, we're going to have to see. I'm curious to hear, was 2 significantly harder than 1 and was 3 significantly harder than 2?
Yeah, 3 was mayhem. So when the third was born, we had 3 kids under 4 years old. So that was pretty challenging. But what that means is, it's great now. So that I don't miss anything. I don't miss those races I didn't do. And being a father is one of the best things ever. So the trade-off was really no trade, but there's identity. So you have your identity wrapped up in being, this fast athlete and this stuff and winning, but it's way better. The day-to-day is being in a strong marriage with kids in a house that's harmonious and filled with love is just so great. Now it's like the best time of my life. Yeah. And remember, you're not saying never again. You're just saying, look, in this season of my life, I'm going to focus on something different. I'm going to try and do that really well. So do the fatherhood piece really well. do the husband piece really well. And then, you know, here I am 15 years later, and I'm back to the same life. I mean, I'm different, the life's different, but it's effectively the same thing. I mean, it's, you know, it's like, it's the triathlon lifestyle, and it's great.
Yeah. Now that the kids are older, I mean, from observation, it seems as though like you're obviously taking your training pretty seriously right now. Monica still takes her training super seriously. Your wife, like,
She doesn't consider that.
really?
Kids are number one.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
No, she thinks, honestly, she's on just maintenance, and that's the way she sees. Because remember, she's not running. She runs a little bit. She never rides unless it's with the kids a little bit in the summer. She still swims and she still lifts, but she's training just like an age grouper.
Do you guys have to have conversations around like how do we make the training fit in, or is it like pretty seamless now that the kids are older?
So yeah. Well, that was also the other thing too. I mean, it just didn't seem fair for me to put my training, like when it was nuts and we had all those preschoolers and babies around and stuff, it didn't seem fair to like be carving stuff out for my workouts and that. So back then, we would make it a priority for the other person to get their exercise in because that was a health priority.
Yeah.
In terms of training, what we try and do is what I recommend to people: see if you can get your control of your mornings. And then, you know, so then by the time your youngest is in kindergarten, you might be able to get a fixed slot Monday to Friday in the morning, and you can do a lot with that. And because you can kind of cover for each other on the weekend, so you can get a little bit. But that's what we did. And I do remember a period of time when money got a little tight, and Monica was waking up, like she was waking up in the dark, running on the treadmill, and then hanging out with the kids all day, and that'd be it. And that was kind of what we had available then. And then we kind of restructured things, and you know, you just don't lose each other and don't lose your health. You know, it can be pretty crazy for a couple of years if you want to have a lot of kids.
Yeah. We don't know. We're going to have to think about that, but we are thinking about already, like, all right, because for both of us, being active is really important. And I think for Jeannie, even now, like going through pregnancy and feeling really crappy in the early stages, like for her to just be able to go get, you know, on a trainer for an hour or be able to go lift for half an hour, like that's a priority. It has to happen no matter what. So already having those conversations of like, all right, baby comes, what's going to happen? Like Jeannie's going to have to get her workout done early. I'm going to be on dad duty until she's back. Okay, I'm going to head out for my training or my work or whatever I've going on. Like we're trying to already sort of sift through that. There will be another piece because Jeannie is so good at triathlon that like she ultimately probably wants to get back to racing. And so that's going to be something we need to sort out. But that's all really good advice on the family side, I think.
Basic week. Yeah. So the whole family was on a basic week, and we would change it once a quarter. Okay. So the kids would know what they were doing in the week. Cool. We would know. Mm-hmm. And we just did the same kind of thing. And we just put the family on a structure and we tweak it once a quarter.
Okay. That's good advice. We're going to have to take that into consideration because we're planners, but not like I like the once a quarter because that's something. I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day. Like I'm really good at thinking in a 3-month or a 6-month period. I'm terrible at thinking in a year or a 2-year or a 5-year plan. Like I have no idea what's going to happen in 5 years, but I can handle the next 3 months.
Exactly. I would say just do that.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, now I got the real rapid fire coming up before we finish up the podcast today. So question number 1, most number of training hours you've logged in a week in your whole life?
12-day camp. 84 hours.
Ooh, okay, that's mega. Wow, that's actually insane. That was build up to Ultraman, or?
No, we got a little out of control. It's a thing called Epic Camp, and it was Epic Camp Australia. I averaged 7 hours a day.
Oof. We did some hectic stuff with Julie. There was a 42-hour week in there at one point with the guys. So I kind of know what you're talking about. All right, number 2, weirdest or best thing you've eaten on a long ride or run?
That's a good one. When I was training for the Leadville 100 bike, I had a fun day where I rode over to Winter Park, had a meal, and then rode back home. That was pretty cool. And Rollinsville used to have a place that had a really nice, you get a huge piece of cake, and that was another one I really liked. So up there, Rocky Mountain stuff.
Jeannie and I's bucket list is to ride to Rollins Pass, hike over, stay the night, hike back, and then ride back down. That's like, we've been talking about that for years. We got to make it happen. Maybe we'll have a baby on the back now. All right, number 3, who has changed more diapers, you or Monica?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I love babies, so I definitely did my share. We're probably, I don't know. I'm gonna say Monica will have me on the number, but I feel like I did my share.
Okay, good. All right, number 4. What's your current favorite running shoe?
Oh, I'm gonna give you 2. Cloud Boom Strike I really like, but Saucony just came out with the highest level Saucony. What's it called? There's I think it might be the Elite, Endorphin Elite.
Oh, like the Endorphin Pro series or whatever, or even like a level above that.
Yeah, whatever the highest one is, the second version.
Okay.
So the Prime X is illegal. The Adidas Prime X, the stack's too high, but the feel, I like that really cushiony feel. That high-end Saucony shoe has the same feel, and I just set a PB in the 5K wearing it, so I have a very good vibe on it.
Yeah, that's how I feel about, I actually don't feel that way about any shoe right now. Anyways, that's good advice. All right, number 5, I've got 6. If you had to race Ironman Canada again, same exact conditions, same exact course, what time would you go tomorrow?
Oh, tomorrow? I'm not ready.
All right, 6 months. Let's say, for example, you had, because you're a long period guy, maybe the day of Roth. If that was Ironman Canada, same conditions, same course, everything.
Yeah. So actually, this is a beautiful question. I believe that with the bike technology and the shoe technology, it won't be course for course, but I think I can match my elite times now at this age.
Cool.
That's what I'm working towards, because I was never that fast on the short stuff. The bikes are so good now. The velocity cost me 10% less power. Yeah. Compared to what we were riding. And then the shoes are probably worth, I don't know, 5 seconds a K. So, there's real numbers now compared to kind of the old school stuff.
Yeah, 100%. To give context, you went 8:29 in 2004. So that's pretty ripping for mid-50s.
So, well, yeah, I'm definitely trying to go sub Simone. I saw what she did in Arizona with the 430 bike and then the 259 run.
You got that.
And I was like, you know what? That's a great target.
Cool. All right. Last question is, what's one thing you're really looking forward to non-sport related in 2026?
So I got a friend who's turning 60 and they have these cruises where they take you around to ports and then you go ride your bike and come back. It's like a small boat. And so he's doing that, and he invited me along. And so it's going to be, what is it? I think it's in Croatia in October. So it's something totally random.
That sounds epic. All right. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a pleasure getting to know you more. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks.